Hello everyone, welcome Jedi School members and the Outer Order. An important issue has come up which keeps coming up in recent occult times, which I've talked about somewhat in past audios, but I think it's really important that people understand these two very prominent issues that are out there that I keep running into. And I'm always amazed because it's generally so difficult, particularly in the past, for occultists in general to make much money from the occultism and thus keep going and writing books or running organizations, etc. It's always been very, very difficult, and there's always been very few full-time occultists. One of the things is in the revival of occultism, which really hit in the 80s after the big 60s revival of occultism initially, which was basically fueled by drugs and sex. And, it was what was thrown in there was alternative thinking, which spurred from some of this consciousness changing, including a war where people were questioning whether they would be murdered by their own government in a land for no purpose whatsoever called Vietnam. So when you combine all these things into this unusual cocktail of things, these belief systems started to spring up from what is considered the same base of poor material to build something on called the human race. So that spurred for a period of time, fueled a lot by drugs and sex. And of course that kept everything going. Everybody's interested in drugs, particularly women. Of course, once you get the women on drugs, you get them sexually. That's why marijuana became and is now super popular because of its aphrodisiac effects, as well as the fact is that it gets you in this kind of zoned out reality, which alcohol doesn't do. Alcohol is an uninhibitor. Marijuana and so forth tends to be a depressor. It's quite a bit different, but I'm not going to go into those at this particular point. But so there's a lot of very interesting, and there was an awful lot of drugs and sex at that time, which gets people to show up and participate. People come for the high, and they come for the sex. And this happened through so many different things. This was the birth of Playboy magazine and other things, which failed at its liberation task. It goes on and on with those things. So as we moved into there, and we came into the 80s, where Wicca was reborn, but reborn by preachy, lesbian-type women who pushed fake morality and, of course, no sex. So that was all cut out of the original Wicca, which was very sexual by Gardner. And that was a very particular time where that was started as well, which bordered into the 60s, where it was drugs and sex. So that came birth. And part of this preachy new birth of occultism was the fact of this total disgust of anything that had to do with any type of assertive warrior type occultism. Even printing of the old grimoires, which tend to be dark in nature because it was alternative literature and pulp fiction. People didn't want to have books written only, which there are some about angelic fun things. They wanted the meat of the things. They want like people want today, sex, money, and power. So these preaching Wicca types, which ruled occultism for a period of time, were the first people to criticize anybody that wanted to install retribution or justice with the threefold law. Of course, they were the first ones to attack anybody when it happened. But there was this major push against anything, quote, satanic. And even if by publishing grimoires, and even in any way having freedom of press, meaning, well, look at this stuff, it's part of learning the process. You have to know everything about occultism, particularly as a occult scientist. But we were rejected by several publications, particularly the Wiccans, who wouldn't take ads for the organization. And anything tied into black magic and Satanism was considered the kiss of death. And Satanists has always been their own type anyway. They really, while we wanted to have some base communication with them to figure out where they were coming from and whether this was just levee philosophical type Satanism, they were not interested in communicating whatsoever, being the type of nasty jerks they are. So, but that was always. Now, this had changed as we start rolling into the year 2000, where now black magic and Satanism is considered, hey, this is powerful and let's use it. Pushed on the public in many different areas. As a matter of fact, a person being labeled a black magic practitioner or a Satanist, which to a large extent in the past was a kiss of death, is now a badge of honor. That's very interesting. And what's also going on with this is this huge amount of criminal activity of selling fake charged items. All this jewelry, this ghost, there's ghosts in here, there's spirits in here. And this all started, and I'm not going to go into the long story of it, but this all started as a criminal activity to launder money. And the people that are selling these things, by the thousands, by the way, particularly on eBay, where it's springing up yet again, where it was doing lots of business prior to that. And how you can sell 1,000 spirits in items and not have a single negative posting against you ought to tell you the kind of criminal activity that's going on. So it was a big laundry operation, and it caught on. And once the criminals found out that people will buy rings based on stories, and they can get away with it, or any other spooked item, they started doing this in mass, and now there are hundreds of people producing these things, and it all comes down to the same thing. They all basically have the same jive, and that jive is they're big, tough Satanists dealing with demons, and the demons empower everybody. And too bad it doesn't empower them to make money in other ways than stealing from the occult public. Now, producing items of this type, which 99% are just totally worthless. There's nothing in them. There is a certain percentage of these that are filled with demonic evil spirits, because those are the people doing it, and they also serve as a way to connect and vampire you. But people are dropping thousands and thousands of dollars on these things, and I just don't quite understand it, and I still have yet to find anybody who can give me a conclusive story that these things ever worked for them. Now, we plan in the future, as the Guild gets involved in different areas, to do some research again in this area. Now, we did this many years ago in the 80s with practitioners who you read their ads that say, bring back lovers within hours, we will do this. And, we took a legitimate person who had a broken love affair, and these people did absolutely nothing. They were unsuccessful, every single one of them. Not only that, they kept coming back for more and more money. Well, we just need another $100 for this special candle, and this will work. And this was the game they did. And they continue to take people who are desperate and have lost love, etc., and sucker every penny they can out of them. We've even had people who said, well, all you need to do if you want to bring back your lost boyfriend is you have to sleep with me, and I'll give you this occult power. I mean, it's gone to this huge amount of level from fraudulent money, and because this was an attractive woman who contacted this guy, is that this was the way to do it. And, I mean, this is the kind of absurdity that goes on. Now, this get-rich-quick mentality, which is perpetrated on the internet now by you'll make millions in the stock market, all by just using this program. Complete and total fraud. And of course nothing is done about it, because the criminals that run these things are also in league with all the so-called law enforcement who they pay, who basically are criminals. So the whole idea is that criminals watching the criminals don't add up too well. So these types of things that are offered out there are complete and totally bogus. Now, we're going to go and check these people out in the next coming months. Hopefully sometime this year, we'll start buying these items and testing if there's anything in there. Testing if they work in the way that they're supposed to. The fact that they're sending incubuses and succubuses to people, which are sexual demons that debilitate and destroy you, that people somehow think this is pleasurable sex. And all these other things are promising everything from lottery wins to great wealth and everything else. Well, if you're going to produce stuff like that, you better use it yourself as well. And when you start making outrageous claims, then you better be able to back it up. But I guess when you price something for $300 or $400, which I don't consider nothing, seems a fairly large amount of money, and the people that seem to buy these things are the least likely to afford these things, don't seem to be putting up much of a stink, and don't seem to be in any way getting into conflict with these people because it doesn't work in demanding their money back. Now, when the guild makes something, what we tell people about initiations and empowerment is we open the doors for you, which is extremely important. If you were going to learn something, let's say you were going to a class and to learn automobile repair, and the knowledge is in that classroom, and you went there every day and the door was locked, well, you're not going to learn. Now, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to learn. If the door's unlocked, you go in, you sit in the class, and you may or may not learn. And the level of learning and skill you get is dependent upon you. And, that's how magic really works. If you have a good amulet or talisman, it opens the door for you. It draws you in. But you can't give people power. You can assist people. You can create energies around them better. But, magic works with you, not for you. Now, these people are selling magic that works for you. For some reason, demonic spirits and succubuses and everything else want to work for you for nothing. They just want to be there, be taken care of. They're orphans. They're puppies that want to be taken in and fed and taken care of. And because of that, they're going to somehow give you all these things back. And quite frankly, like most magical items, which are generally underpriced considering what they do in your life, if these things achieve the level of empowerment that they stated, they would be the most fantastic buys on the market. Now, as with almost every product we get, they fail horribly to meet any of their claims, whether it's alternative science technologies, whether it's radionic machines, whether they're crystals or this garbage orgone that's out there. Everything fails to reach any kind of level of validity out there. To a large extent, a lot of this stuff is placebo information. You hold this crystal, you do this, you're going to do it. You don't have the capacity, and you haven't trained yourself really to draw in these very subtle energies to use them in your life very well. So this is what 99% of the products are out there. You have to be very careful of who is selling these products and what is the motive behind it. When you look at some of these people and what they offer on different websites, and there are many, many of them, apparently they are selling quite a few of these things, which I guess people figure, and the cheaper stuff, it's just anywhere from $50 to a few $100s. People say, hey, what do I got to lose? Maybe there is something here and it'll help my life. And I certainly can understand that, and I think people do a lot of things like that. There are other ones that run 5, 6 thousands there, and you have to wonder what is there and what the purpose of those things are. But I guess people have the same kind of attitude. As I mentioned, there's even a practitioner who is stating they can physically change you, and apparently get away with it. Now, this is quite mind-boggling, and they all use what is now 100% acceptable, apparently, that it all comes from demons. Isn't that wonderful? Because after all, the good stuff has all failed. So, I mean, that's, I guess, people's reality, and somehow you're going to be taken care of by these loving, wonderful demons. They just want to help you. They're just the demon puppies that you bring in your house and wag their tail all the time at you and just want to help. Um, and this can all be achieved, and you can get whatever you want, including body changes, just for a few hundred. And apparently this scheme works very well. And as I said, this started on eBay and grew when eBay stopped allowing that, which they're allowing it again either directly or indirectly from the crap that's on there, particularly apparently from people overseas. Um, and there's a lot of people putting out this stuff. Apparently, people do buy these things and they don't work and they just shrug it off. Well, I'm always amazed by that people should put up with that when people make outrageous claims. And the problem is with anything in life is that people want the dream without the work. People want to be the fastest runner. They want to be the best driver. They want to be the smartest computer worker. The only thing that is missing there is they don't want to do any work to achieve it. I mean, all the fantasy technologies and the demonic singularity that is being touted now as the future of combining man and machine is all about shortcuts to things that you don't want to learn. It's not about building human consciousness. It's about, well, go and have a device implanted. And of course, nobody wants to empower you individually so that the individual is not dependent upon society. They want you to spend lots and lots of money and have intricate operations and depend upon their machines and how they function. So it's really a huge plan for disaster. But that's for another audio. But, the main thing that I'm trying to stress here is well, there's no work involved. You don't have to do anything. Well, of course, that's what tools are all about. But tools are really there to help you, not to do the job for you. As I said, you certainly don't want to pound nails into building a house or anything else that you need to do by using your fist or using a rock. Well, you want to get a nice tool like a hammer so you can do it efficiently. But the hammer's not going to hammer in the nail by itself. You've got to learn how to use a hammer. You've got to have eye-hand coordination. But, without the hammer, you're kind of fucked. So, and it's the same thing with magic. You need tools, but the tools are not going to make you to give you abilities. They open doors. They push you as far as we can with many of these things. And with using the right tool, you have the opportunity to access that. But if you're not going to practice, if you're not going to work, if you're not going to work with magic, if you're not going to open up channels to come to you, well, you want to be rich, you want to meet people, or how are they going to come to you? They're not going to come knocking on your door while you're sitting on your sofa watching TV. We've talked about this many times before. So, it has a lot to do with the fact of being initiated into the opportunity to do things. People think initiations give you power. They don't. You can't transfer power to anybody. Power is very elusive. Why it is almost genetic in some cases, where the ability seems to be with one person and then it's passed through the family. Well, there's a certain amount of that that's true. But a lot of it is just plain learned, and you have to open up the sensitivities to those areas. Thinking you're going to get a charged item that's going to do something for you is just staggering to me. And what's put out there by people and the lies they perpetrate is something that you, as a occult scientist, should be very, very weary of. We also want to hear from anybody who's bought these things. We want to hear your good and bad stories. If you're happy about some particular product you've gotten, let me know. Maybe that's a person of interest. We're always seeking someone who truly does have certain powers and abilities. They may be out there. Most people that have powers and abilities don't sell things. They go out and they make it for their own selves. They empower their lives, and they do what you're supposed to do as an occultist. Act and be silent. It's interesting that as of recently, with the release of Doctor Strange, based on the Marvel comic book, I got some of the back issues of that, and was reading the first issues or so. It was very interesting, and the first issue of Doctor Strange comic book and there's some conversation, something going on, and there's some problem, of course. And Doctor Strange says, well, you know, it's best that the world doesn't know what we're doing in here. You know, act and be silent. You know, it's interesting that even in comic books, the occult lore and occult laws come out to be stated. So, you know, people, it's like everything else in life. There's an old saying, those that do, do, and those that can't teach. And there's a large amount of truth in that. If you're really empowered and have all these abilities, why are you making this kind of peanuts when you can go out and do these things and make a lot more money? If people really could have spirit sex mates, this would be the biggest business in the world. And I guess the reason why these people actually prosper so much is because of that. So, and who are these people? These are people that just set up websites. But we are always in search of people that have special knowledge or special power, and we've never found it as of yet. I mean, like most things in life, from your fake doctor who you go to with a problem, I don't know, we can't help, take this. Or you hear from them, well, you're going to die. And, of course, before that, we have to do operations on you so I can get a new house, and a new car, and vacations, and fill my pockets with you as an experiment. And whatever happens to you, we don't really care. You know, those frauds that are lawyers who take all your money and know damn well that the system is rigged, and they're most likely not rigged in your favor, and he knows you're not going to win, but after all, it's a business. They don't give a shit. Right, give me your money, this is what we do, bye. Even though both of those areas destroy your life. So with all the frauds that are out there, it's not just occultism. I want to make that crystal clear. I don't know of anything in society in general that isn't complete and total fraud. It's a lie. Plain and simple. So the whole idea is that when we deal with these things, you have to be buyer beware. You have to be very careful. And ask these people, you know, if they are so powerful and these work so well, they should have no problem refunding you if it isn't a product that's good for them. After all, they're super powerful sorcerers and wizards. The demons love them. They work for them. They're charging them in items. Well, you shouldn't have a problem then being able to return that, should you, if you're going to make such outrageous claims. So that's very important to look at and know. So, what is going on there with these particular people? So, we want to hear your good and bad stories, and as I said, we are always open for anything, anywhere, any place, in any field that works, just like alternative healing and everything else, which is fraught with criminals and deceivers who are going to tell you that this new supplement coming along at $25 to $30 a bottle, that of course you're going to need to buy at least monthly, is going to solve all your problems. And, of course, that's why they live so long. You know, as I mentioned about 15, 20 years ago, it was coral calcium, which is pretty much impossible to digest. And, of course, that's why the Okinawans live so long, because of the calcium. They wrote a whole book on it and made millions, and, of course, then they disappear. You know, the things like garlic come up, oregano, all these things come up. Where are they the best things out there? And it can be very expensive. I mean, alternative supplements now can easily run you $50 to $150 a bottle for these miracle things which may do nothing. The cheaper supplements they're finding, and have done research in stores around the country, have absolutely nothing in them. They're basically even waste products, things like shells and ground up waste products, which are worthless, that they're putting in as supplements. And there's none of the actual supplement on the bottle in the capsule. So let's get this very clear of all of this stuff. So this selling of junk is something that you as an occult scientist need to steer away from and not get caught into. The instant empowerment, this wonderful spirit that will heal or hurt or give you jollies, is a lure that is hard to pass up. And I certainly understand it. Well, here it is quick. I don't have to study. I don't have to center myself. I don't have to build my psychic powers. This spirit's going to do it for me. And the reason why is because it's a demon. So, I mean, we have to be very careful here. And if you don't really understand what's going on here and have the proper centering, you're just going to be wasting a lot of money. You know, the guild tries to make things as easy and as straightforward and empower you to the level that is possible. And we try and make our products as enticing and as interesting as possible without going overboard and making silly promises. But people want to hear these silly promises, and if you don't state silly things, then you don't get any sales whatsoever. That's just the nature of this market and pretty much every other market. People don't want to do anything unless there's going to be this huge payback. You know, it always amazes me with, and I go back to the penis enlargement pills, which are totally fraudulent. Why they're even allowed to be sold, I have no idea. But, you know, they come and go all the time, and I think you can probably buy these things consistently out there from somebody's probably making these fake things. They obviously don't work. Now, anybody who could find that because of male insecurities in there would be the richest person on the planet. And I've seen these kind of info commercials in the past. About 10 years ago, these were popular on TV in the United States. It's just, you know, and I'm sure it's still out there in many different forms. And it's just complete garbage. It doesn't work. And yet, they're selling these things for $30 a bottle, and I don't know if they offered returns or not on them. But, you know, you figure into a business that you're going to get a certain amount of returns, and you'd be surprised how few those are, even with making ridiculous claims. But, you know, products that cost you, you know, $1 or $2 to make, and even if you get a 20 or 30% return, which is considered devastating in some fields, well, it's only a $2 product. So you make it up on the shipping to that person. They've actually paid for the product. So if you add the shipping in there, you've probably made $1 or $2, even if you refund the person in profit. So you have to be very careful not to fall into the penis enlargement trap of this. Made by a great healer, it's done by this, it comes from there. You know, all these things are fraught with problems, even if they come supposedly from certain areas. You know, the Tibetans, which people seem to like here and there, are not overly well people, and they have a real serious problem with blindness. So I don't know what their healers are doing, but this is a serious problem. So getting a healing substance from them. The fakeness of Reiki. Everybody's a Reiki master, yet everybody's sick. And the people who tend to be Reiki masters, and oftentimes are people that don't seem to be very well themselves, and secondarily seem to be a little goofy. And to think that you're going to go to a class for 6 weeks or even 6 months to become a Reiki master is absurd. So all of these things you have to be very careful of falling in the traps. Yes, it's nice to hear enticing stories. Yes, these are a necessity to motivate you, and as someone who sells anything, you have to make your product as interesting as possible. And when you get into occult products, since it's individual dependent, these things can do amazing things for people. And we have amazing stories from people who have used guild products and have achieved great things. Other people, while everyone seems to be happy with products, you know, they want this kick bang boo bah explosion type empowerments, which is just not real in the world. If we could do that, we'd be selling things for tens of thousands of dollars. And because everybody would be more than happy to have super empowerments, and it would be no problem. I mean, it doesn't work like that. So these people who advertise in the National Enquirer in the United States and these types of things are a little bit ridiculous with all these claims. I just don't know how they get away with it, but it's a slick little game that's done by gypsy type practitioners who bait their customers, give them fear, and then build on that. You're cursed, and if you don't buy this or buy that, your life is ruined. Well, in real curses, this may be the case, but gypsies tell this to everybody. And this is how they get money out of you, and it continues. So, you have to be very, very careful of anything out there. I've dealt with experts in this field for 40 years on both sides. I've dealt with authors, and universally, authors who write books and claim that they're experts are complete and total failures. And it just goes down the line with every single one of these people. There's only been a few that have shown to have any personal power whatsoever, and usually those were the ones that the guild further trained. They came with some basic natural abilities, and then when they learned the guild systems and how to empower themselves, their systems produced at a very high level and increased their natural abilities dramatically in their success. But almost categorically, the people who write books and everything else are not people who are very successful. And they don't know much. And if you look at their history and you look up people of what they've done, well, they're involved with all sorts of shady activities, all the stupid groups that are Crowley-based. And it goes on and on with these things. And you get people who promise godlike powers. All these things are what? And what is the manifestations of it? Well, the point is that there is very little proof that these people can achieve anything. And they make these claims because claims sell. And the allure of a spirit in an item that's going to do something for you, of course, that requires no work from you, at times can be overwhelming. And apparently people are opening up their wallets and dropping hundreds and hundreds of dollars for these items. And even when something doesn't work that great, people come back to these practitioners and buy more. And I don't quite understand this on any level whatsoever.